Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your lifestyle specialist, Kenny Burns, and I'll be the moderator for the Fulton County and Alive and in Color presents Back to Life, but first a reality check, uplifting facts and empowering the culture to drive COVID-free communities. I'd like to first give a shout out to our amazing panel, Duran Bailey, Lisa Cunningham, Nancy A. Flake Johnson, Dr. Jane Morgan, Marshall, DJ Mars Thomas, one of my favorite DJs of all times, and Zachary Wallace, who is another one of my great friends and owner of Local Green Atlanta. We are here to discuss the summer surge of COVID-19 and the risks posed to our communities, the role of herd immunity in stopping the spread of COVID, and how the vaccine equity gap acts as a barrier, and also how lifestyle influencers and organizers can help to overcome those barriers to create a COVID-free community. I'd like to recognize the Fulton County Board of Commissioners who are on the call. And a couple things I need you to do during this process. I need you to register at aliveandincolor.com, ask all the questions you need to on the site and in this chat. And also, we will unmute you, as you have questions, etc. Topic number one, the rapidly rising risk of COVID-19 in our communities. The urgency of the summer surge is real. The US has seen transmission rates skyrocket as the Delta variant spreads. A couple fun facts that are not so fun. Average daily cases jumped by 48,000 in 1 month. From late June to late July, the average daily case rate rose from 12,000 to 60,000. Fulton County positivity rate is the highest since January, 13%. The COVID positivity rate for Fulton County as of 8/17 is the highest it's been since January. COVID-19 cases in Atlanta are up 153.2% in the last week, and spikes are even higher in places like Chattahoochee Hills, which is 400%, Johns Creek, which is 245.3%, and Palmetto, which is up a whopping 428%. I'd like to bring Dr. Morgan to the table and ask her a question. How concerned should we be about the Delta variant and why?
Thank you so much for having me today, Kenny and Maharia. I'm Dr. Jane Morgan. I'm the Executive Director of the COVID Task Force for Piedmont Healthcare here in Georgia, which is the largest healthcare system here. We have 18 medical campuses across the state of Georgia. One of the things that we absolutely want to be concerned about with this Delta variant is that it is raging in the summertime, not just in the summertime, but the month of July was the hottest month ever recorded since we've been keeping temperatures. And we saw a virus that proliferates in cool weather take off and ravage our nation in the Southeast. That's how concerned we are. We're not even in the type of weather where we normally see these types of viruses move forward. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., you will see all of the major healthcare systems in the state of Georgia come together for a press conference, all chief medical officers together to deliver a very ominous message of where we are in the hospitals, how close we are to capacity, and the issue we are facing of diversion. When a hospital goes on diversion, that means we are not accepting new patients. We have no capacity. So that means patients without COVID. Remember, we used to treat patients without COVID. We do that too. So if you're in a car accident, you have a choking incident, you have a heart attack, you have a stroke, you have a diabetic episode, a rash, an allergic reaction, we are on diversion. Imagine that if you have every hospital system here on diversion, and what a crisis we are facing. That's something tomorrow that is unprecedented. Every major medical system will have a joined press conference tomorrow to talk about how serious this is. The last thing that I'll say about this Delta variant is understand the language that is now being used, that scientists understand. We no longer are using the word mutation. We are using the word variant. That is not innocuous. In science, that is an ominous sign. A variant is comprised of several mutations that have all come together in a cluster to create a new version of the original virus. So this is not even the original virus any longer. We are not talking about mutations. That word variant is significant in science. That tells us this is not even the same virus.
Right.
So we want to take this incredibly seriously. Think about your health, consider getting vaccinated to protect yourself and to protect all of those who cannot be vaccinated, which includes children under the ages of 12.
Right. And Dr. Morgan, let's talk about the racial disparities and how people of color are getting hit the hardest. What does this mean for our community?
So I think one of the things we need to think about with our community is why we have such a low vaccine uptake. And so certainly we have all 3 points of a triangle that really are very germane to the African-American community. We have, in developing these vaccines, we've got these large medical systems for which we have very little trust and not a lot of health equity and access. And then we bring together research.
Right.
Not only the Tuskegee experiment, Dr. James Marion Sims, and all types of other types of research that have been done at our detriment and to our involuntary sacrifice that have advanced the cause of medicine and science. And then the third tip of that triangle is the United States government, where we have an ongoing uneasy relationship, certainly under the past administration, with our societal construct. All 3 of those come together in this triangle to bring us this vaccine. So it's no wonder that we have vaccine hesitancy. And then you add something called messenger RNA. What is that?
Right.
So there was not education, there was not communication, there was not information ahead of this rollout, and there was not understanding of the historical context and the societal construct of the African-American community and their lack of a warm relationship with the medical system, the research system, and the United States government.
Right. And another unfun fact, despite representing only 30% of the population in Georgia, Black residents represent 53% of the deaths among residents 18 to 49. These are wild numbers to me. And the fact that it's spiking again with this new variant is troubling. DJ Mars and Zach, are you there? I have a question for you. Did you realize that we had lost so much ground and so fast? And do the streets know we are back here and how bad it really is?
All right. So from my perspective, in the entertainment space that I kind of occupy, I feel like people. This is my take on it. There's a little bit of fatigue and there's a lot of apathy, right? Because, like the doctor said, we don't trust. So we don't trust. So I've seen people who come to the clubs frequently never have a mask. So the same person who never had a mask, he or she's not going to get the shot, right? And I see it. It worries me. I'm not sure if Zach sees it in his space. So it worries me because these people, they are going to be a part of that 53%. And I'm legitimately scared because some of them are my friends, and they're going to be a part of that 53%. And I feel like I'm going to lose some of them only because of those factors. Apathetic, they never trusted the government, and then they never masked up during the entire 2020. So I understand why our numbers are higher in that space. This is very scary.
Zach?
Yeah, the awareness level for me, it really seemed like right when we got comfortable, the variant really kicked in. And then it was the whole thing of understanding what a variant is. You know, what Dr. Jane just so eloquently explained to us is that, you know, my wife is a data scientist, so I hear the CDC calls on the Zooms, and I'm like, with my ear to the door, like, oh, Lord, we're in trouble again. You know, I thought we were out the weeds, and we're back in it, you know, and it's like, all right. So I was, you know, I had vaccine hesitancy. She got it back in March. I'm a holistic guy. Sea moss, elderberry, black seed oil, vitamin D, echinacea. I'm taking it all, right? But to see the numbers and to hear the way it's raging throughout community, I just couldn't. I couldn't sit there and remain the same and just ride this wave of thinking that we're in the clear. And and I said, so that's when I started to really take heed and go ahead and start looking at getting my vaccine and reinforcing the COVID restrictions that we had in 2020 in my restaurant, staffed with masks, because people was like, oh, I came in one day and one of my employees was behind the register with no mask, and she was like, oh, don't worry, I'm vaccinated. And I was like, come here, no, vaccinated or not, you're gonna wear this mask, or we're gonna have to, figure something else out. So the awareness is not as high as it should be, and that's why we all coming together to do what we can to try to save some lives.
Right. I actually have a similar story with my wife actually scheduling her vaccination without telling me, because she knew I was against it early on. But I think once you understand the selfless act of it and the fact that the community won't be the same if we don't get vaccinated led me to get mine. Dr. Morgan, a surge of the unvaccinated and the importance of herd immunity. What does this mean for vaccinated individuals like myself?
Yeah, so when we think about herd immunity, it got its origins really in farmers, right? At the turn of the century, at the turn of the 19th century, cattle farmers, right? They had herds, and they noticed that when diseases came through that impacted their cattle, the ones that didn't die, not only did they seem impervious to future disease, but all those cattle that subsequently joined the herd or were born to the herd were also immune. And so they began to realize that if you have a certain percentage of your cows that survive a pandemic, that the entire herd is immune. They call that herd immunity, and human medicine borrowed that term. So that's where the term comes from. And it means that as long as there's a certain percentage of the population that's immune, everyone doesn't have to be immune, but enough people have to be immune in the herd such that there is no opportunity for the virus to find a host, so that there's no disease to spread and be contagious. So that's herd immunity, and that's what we're trying to achieve with this vaccine. And it's what we have successfully achieved with the measles, mumps, rubella, varicella vaccines. That's herd immunity. That's why we don't get sick with those diseases any longer. So one of the things we have to think about with the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, certainly in light of the announcement today from the White House and from the FDA and from the CDC combined, is that when we're talking about these booster shots that now they want people to begin to receive when you are 8 months out from your second shot, is because we're starting to see waning immunity, meaning we are starting to see our antibody levels drop slightly after the 6-month mark. And that is in relation to a time factor, but also multiplied by this new variant. We're seeing our immunity levels drop. Now, even though we're seeing immunity levels drop, we do see a higher infectivity, these breakthrough infections with patients with people who are vaccinated, but we are not seeing an increase in hospitalizations nor an increase in death of people who are vaccinated. So these vaccines are holding. The majority of people who are in the hospital, by and large, still remain unvaccinated. And the breakthrough cases that are in the hospital, 50% of those are people who are immunocompromised, which is why we are adding an additional dose to those who are immunocompromised. This is not their booster dose. This is actually still a part of their original series, because it is recognized that the 2 doses of Moderna and Pfizer and the single dose of Johnson & Johnson did not get their levels up as high as the rest of ours because they're immunocompromised. So they need an additional dose just to reach the levels of antibodies and immunity where the rest of us are. So we are seeing this move forward as really a pandemic. They say a pandemic, I know it's called a pandemic of the unvaccinated, but it's really a pandemic driven by our behavior. And it is so tragic because in this 4th surge, This entire surge, every death, every hospitalization has been entirely preventable because it is this surge where we have had vaccines,
Right.
where we didn't have them in the previous one. So behavior has driven this huge, unprecedented press conference that we're having tomorrow, entirely preventable. Every single death that we have in this surge, because we've got vaccines for this time, whereas we did not in the first two, and we were just rolling them out at the third surge.
Right. This point alone should make people want to get vaccinated. Local and national economic disruption caused by this pandemic. Ms. Johnson, tell us more about what you've seen as it relates to the economic disruption the pandemic has caused so far in our communities.
Well, we all know that when not enough income is coming into any household, everything falls apart. And the first thing that goes typically is the roof over your head. And if your family has nowhere to go, we've got serious problems.
Serious.
And candidly, if it wasn't for the CDC moratorium, which has been extended on multiple occasions,
Absolutely.
but it has not eliminated evictions. There's still a ton of families that are living in their cars. Many have been pushed into extended stay arrangements, which of course those entities have jacked prices. And quite frankly, if you're paying $50 a night for a room in what oftentimes may not be safe for 30 days, that's $1,500 a month. And
Right.
rooms aren't $50, right? So now what the difference is, if you couldn't keep up with your $1,000 rent, how can you do $1,500? It's driven people to the gig economy because, where they can make daily wages to try to cover the roofs over their heads. The fact of the matter is, disproportionately, African Americans are in the service sector. We're essential workers. We're in retail sector, lower wage employment pre-pandemic. We were already recognized as the worst place in the nation, one of the worst in the nation in this region for the racial wealth gap and income inequality. Hey, y'all, the minimum wage in Georgia is $5.15 when we're number one for business, though, for 8 consecutive years. So the impact economically, devastating. And add these factors, childcare. If childcare centers closed, shut down, schools closed, having to homeschool, what are you gonna do? Leave your 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old at home alone to work? And yet we hear from some of our state leaders that they feel, and they cut off unemployment early for families months before schools reopen, claiming, to force people back to work. The fact of the matter is people are afraid to go back to work for fear of bringing the virus into their homes. They have childcare issues, and pre-pandemic, we have a skills gap in our community. So all that's been exacerbated. The unemployment rate at its peak was 13.8%, way up from in the threes just several months before that in late 2019. And we all know that based on the stats, that's a collective unemployment rate for Black and Brown communities. That number's almost all consistently double.
Right.
So if you don't have a way to make income, mental health issues kick in, desperation. Sadly, the families that we talk to, many don't have other family members to go to for refuge. They're out of the area. And then small businesses, before I close, small businesses also, Black businesses in particular, devastated. There's a stat, 40% of Black businesses closed during the pandemic. So they're coming back online, but it's a slow process, and some will not return.
Yeah, they will never bounce back. Lisa Cunningham, I
Hey,
want to
Kenny, I'm sorry to interrupt. There is a question from the audience from Donnie Bailey. As of August 17th, 2021, 627,000 people in America have died of COVID, but they can break down it by race. Where are you getting this 53% from? When I ask how many Americans have died of COVID, there's no answer. So we posed that question to the panel to see if there is any background on how we are getting the 53% in the breakdown by race.
Got it. Dr. Morgan?
So I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that number, and so I'm not going to be able to comment on it. What I would say is that I don't think any of these numbers are a secret. I think you can look them up at the Department of Public Health. You can look them up on the CDC website. You can probably look it up now and report it back to the panel. I don't know if it's exactly 53%, but none of these numbers are a secret. And I don't think that you should have any difficulty finding what are the hospitalization rates, what is the infectivity rate, and what is the death rate broken down by race, broken down by age, broken down by gender. So we do.
Also, that stat was for Georgia, for the state of Georgia.
Yeah, I was just about to say, yeah, that was a state for Georgia. And the ages were 18 to 49, Mr. Bailey.
So what I will say, the latest data from the Department of Public Health with regard to hospitalizations, we've seen a younger and younger and younger demographic. And so that is a representation of the virulence of this variant, but also a testament to the way that our vaccines are really working effectively. Because those over the age of 65, by and large, more than 85% of them have all been vaccinated. And so now we're seeing this virus look for opportunities. What's the next opportunity? It's in the younger age groups. And what we have seen now for 2 weeks in a row, every single day, is the highest demographic for infections in the state of Georgia are the 18 to 29-year-olds. Right. Imagine that. That's a huge shift in demographics.
Right, and I'll also add this fact: African-American and non-Hispanic whites each make up roughly 48% of the population in Fulton County. Yet Black residents make up 65% of the cases in the last 2 weeks and 67% of the deaths over the last month. Now, I want to bring Lisa Cunningham in along with DJ Mars and Zach. You're all entrepreneurs, small business owners. Tell us about your personal experiences with COVID.
Sure. You know, I'm in the film industry, and it absolutely temporarily obliterated the film industry.
Crazy.
Fortunately, what did happen is that you could actually see that our industry was one of the ones to pivot quickest. And that was simply due to in-house COVID testing. And I'll say in-house, meaning they contracted out companies, but each set had policies and procedures in place, which, you know, we heard a lot about this with Tyler Perry and how he created the bubble for his crew and talent. But what happened was the rapid, antigen test that was available first wasn't apparently as effective as the test that we have now, this gold standard PCR test. Well, over the past, months and year and a half now, that test we're able to do it rapid. So we've got I shoot all the time, and I feel so safe and comfortable, when I shoot, because we are testing, 48 hours in advance. On your average film set, they are testing. The union rule is that they have to test every 3 days. And then people who are considered zone A people, that are people who come in close contact with the talent, they have to test in that, in accordance with that. And then we usually test on my sets day of as well. So, I think the film industry definitely showed how it can be done. But to Nancy, to your point, it comes down to economics. You just can't simply have the Atlanta public school system, right, test like that. These are companies that are doing, projects that make millions upon millions of dollars. So they're just putting that into their bottom line, so, we have to figure out how, some of that model can be, put into other systems, but, that's definitely an economic issue. But we have definitely, personally, I haven't missed a beat because there's been a lot of pivoting that I've been able to do, and a lot of my friends have been able to do in that space. So I think that, there's a lot of creativity that's has had to happen. It's gonna continue, because as this variant, keeps rearing its head, we're gonna have to continue to figure out ways to keep our people safe.
Yeah, Lisa, because we cannot go another year with less content. We need more
That's right.
television shows and films. Amen.
Yeah.
Mars, you're a DJ. Zach,
Yep.
you're a restaurateur. How has it affected you?
Okay, for me, sales dropped 80%. I just refuse to close my doors because we're a healthy restaurant, and I felt like we needed to be open more than ever. So people's immune systems being were already compromised. Especially in the Black community. Chronic illnesses run rapid through our community anyway. So I think with the attention on healthy immune systems, I felt like it was imperative that we stayed open. I just took a lot of precautions, but sales did drop 80%. So I had to really dig deep. I mean, you're talking about a real deep dig. Still pay my core staff, my key members, and kept them afloat. I had to make some hard decisions, but we were able to push through it. And then I don't know if you guys remember the surge of the Black spending and awareness really kind of helped us through the summer piece with after George Floyd incident happened, and things like that. But I heard a quote that when America has the cold, the Black American community has the flu. And that's something that really, really stuck with me, man. Like when when you think about it, and I looked at it from all areas, if you look at it from economics to health, everything, what I'm saying? It's like we get hit first. So these numbers are consistent in every category, from when Ms. Johnson is talking about the economy, when Dr. Morgan is talking about health, is that if you look at it, it's always disproportionately Black. So we have to do everything in our protect ourselves and use the resources afforded to us. And I said something on an interview with Dr. Morgan the other day. I said, imagine if they only gave the vaccine in affluent areas of town. Everybody would be in an uproar, right? It's same people that's
Why can't we get it? We should be able to get it too.
We should be able to. It'd be a line down the street, right? But because the government is pushing and people don't understand, people fear what they don't understand. So that's why it's so important for people like us to come together, learn from the brilliant minds, the scientists, the doctors, the cardiologists, and let them give it to us so we can break it down layman terms, and that's something that's needed right now. Like our people need to see us. That's why I had to once the light bulb switched on for me, then it was like, no, we can't play no more. Like I'm in, what I'm saying? I'm sorry,
Right.
like we have to give that. And another personal experience, my best friend, flatlined twice. He had a birthday party December 20th. And before New Year's, he was hospitalized for 2 months and he flatlined twice. My best friend, my son's godfather, my best man at my wedding was in the hospital. Nobody could see him. And we were getting videos through a iPad that, on his awareness. And he throwing up peace signs and thumbs up, but I could see this man is like, touch and go, and that's the scariest thing ever. People shouldn't have to do that based on vaccine resistance. Like we have to at least try to warn everyone.
Absolutely. Mars?
Clearly, like there was a enormous loss in my sector. I remember I had a tour date with Monica. It was like March 7th, and we had a secondary date, let's say it was March 8th. and the March 7th date went through. The March 8th date did not go through. We got an email 2020 saying, you know, the subsequent tour dates that you guys were working on, we're not going to be able to do. From a DJ, at least in my position, not being able to tour is, you know, it's highway robbery. That's how I make a majority of my touring. Actually allows me to play in the clubs in Atlanta because I make a majority of my money there. I saw in the first 2 weeks of March, I saw 6 figures worth of income disappear. This is, I still have a son in college. You know what I mean? I still have tuition that
abilities.
Grown responsibilities. Yeah. Clubs were closing. So I just saw everything disappear. Yeah. I figured out a pivot because I just absolutely had to, but I saw my money disappear. The shining light in the situation was that it wasn't exclusive to me. So it put me in a position where I could talk to my friends. You know, we did the live stream from your house in that very room that you're in right there. Right. So you see other people going through it. So you say, okay, they're going through it. I'm going through it. We got to figure this out. So it put me in a position to figure out a pivot, but it was devastating. I mean, yeah. Again, my bills didn't stop. My mortgage didn't stop. Yeah. My tuition to my son's school didn't stop. So I was devastated along with everybody else. It just hurt as a human to see people's lives slow down. You see yeah. people worrying about being able to pay for food. You go to a grocery store. I think my most fearful moment during 2020 was I went to Kroger and there was just no food in the store. Yeah, it was scary. You know, like that's to my detriment. I don't know how to fish. I don't know how to grow groceries in my backyard. So it was really scary. We got through it. God put us all here at this moment because he all walked us through it. But that financial roadblock that we all hit, it was scary, Ken.
Kenny, I just want to add that the PPP loan programs that were supposedly designed to support, again, same situation, right. disproportionately not accessible to Black, small, and brown businesses.
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, to Mars's point about the vulnerability we had as a community and how we banded together in some ways. And then now when we have the opportunity to get out of the funk and get out of the despair of COVID, we're not banding together and getting vaccinated. It's an oxymoron and I don't understand it. I really want to curse, but I also want to say this, the COVID vax equity gap, and Ms. Johnson, we can talk about this. We learned how important it is to get at least 70 to 80% of us vaccinated to reach herd immunity. Unfortunately, our community are tripping. Racial gap between Black residents and white residents are almost 90,000 people. Generation gap between the young adults and old heads is from 45 to 54, or 60,000. Ms. Johnson, you can talk about apathy and the lack of access that, you know, is driving this gap. I mean, yeah.
So it really is generational in many respects. Older citizens don't trust government and they don't trust the healthcare system. You've got young Gen Xers and they have a strong streak of concerns around vaccines in general. Millennials and Gen Zers are heavy on social media. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of misinformation campaigns are heavily represented. And yeah, just a lot of inaccurate information there. You know, there are a lot of young people who, because they're young, they feel they're invincible, that I can get through it. I'm strong enough. You know, I had my own nephew didn't want to wear a mask because in his household, his mother and his brother got COVID. Got through it, but he and his dad didn't get it. So he thinks he's immune to it. Right. And, you know, I've got to explain to him, this is brand new. You know, the Delta variant is not what your mother and your brother had. And, it's one of these things that, let's face it, we don't know. We're learning as we go. And at the end of the day, to stop it, we have to lean in to each other and share, like we're doing tonight, the facts, so people can make really authentic decisions, confidently engage with your physician. Dr. Morgan, you are my shero. I just learned so much from you from being on this call. So,
She makes me calm.
yeah, there's a lot of just misinformation, a lot of apathy, and a lot of fear. People fear there's conspiracy theories. People talk about chips and things like that. And let's face it, y'all, they got everything anyway, right here.
Facts. You put your retina eye thing. They got the whole thing to open your phone. But I want to pick up on something you said, Ms. Johnson. I think this is very important. The reasonable doubts, right? So 10 pieces of information that act as barriers. And you mentioned Dr. Morgan. Dr. Morgan, can we talk about some of those barriers? Because there's so many things out here that are deterring people that don't read. And I think if you read and you actually fact check, like you said, the information is available. All you have to do is read or ask someone that reads.
To go to the trusted sites.
Yeah, trusted voices, period. Not your auntie that is jaded because of her experiences or your cut. You know what I mean? But Dr. Moore, can we talk about these 10 pieces of information that act as barriers?
I was saying, sure. Is there any one particular one that you want me to begin with?
Yeah, what are we, what are these that we hear the most? What are some of the ones that you hear?
Sure. We can go through quite a few of them. Why was this vaccine created so quickly? Where are Black people involved in it? Are they giving me a different vaccine than other people with the vaccine? What is the representation of this particular disease that I may have? Was it in the clinical trials? So these are sort of some of the common questions. Other questions I get very frequently in older people or people who are reproductive age, is it going to impact my fertility? Will it impact my baby if it doesn't impact my fertility? And then my child might impact a successive generation and my grandchildren. Does it impact male fertility? And so I think these are a lot of things when we talk about it's not FDA approved, it's only EUA. What does that mean? That means that it's experimental. Et cetera, et cetera. Children don't really get sick. So why should they be hospitalized? Why should we be concerned about them? Masks don't work. So on and on and on. And I can certainly, address a lot of these. And that's, I do a lot of that as well on social media. And if, maybe there's one that I would address, it would be with regard to how quickly these vaccines were developed. And we should remember that in 2003, we actually had our first outbreak of severe acute respiratory syndrome. This virus is severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. So that is an indication to the entire scientific community when we first heard that, this is the second time we've seen it. When did we see it before? We saw it before in 2003. We had that first outbreak. By and large, we had the global pandemic surveillance team in place. We were able to keep that outbreak off of our shores, but alarms were really going off within the scientific community for a number of reasons. One is a virus. What do viruses do? They replicate quickly, they mutate quickly. The other thing was that this was a respiratory virus. We are Homo sapiens. We live on a single planet in the galaxy, Earth. We are humans. As Earth dwellers, we are dependent on oxygen. Our entire atmosphere is made up of hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen. So we can't opt out of air, as opposed to other types of pandemics that might be bloodborne or foodborne or fecal-borne or body fluids. This was air. And so it was very concerning. 2012, we had another outbreak, a sister outbreak, by and large held to Saudi Arabia, the MERS outbreak. You might remember some of these terms. They might have been going through the news and they were beneath your radar, but this is the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome. So now bells are really ringing. By the time we get to 2020, When we have our very first case here in the United States, we've had 17 years of dedicated scientists working on these viruses. And when I say working, I mean, all of the preclinical work was done, done. All of the bench work research was completed. The entire genomic sequence, all 30,000 base pairs, think about that, have been identified and analyzed, and the mechanism of action of this particular family of viruses of binding to what we call the angiotensin converting enzyme receptor on our cell. That's how we get infected, had already been identified. We hadn't even had the first case in the United States. We already knew all of that.
Right.
So this didn't come out of nowhere.
Right. So if you don't mind, Dr. Morgan, can we ask the audience to tell us their top 5? Would anybody in the audience like to say what are some of the things that they're hearing? One of my question would be to sound off, what's in it? All right, here we go. Can you guys see the screen, Dr. Morgan, everybody?
I can.
Tell us what you're hearing most. They said breakthrough cases of COVID-19 prove that even if I get the vaccine, I can still get COVID, so why bother?
Right. So that is true. Even if you get the vaccine, you could still get COVID, but you are 80% less likely to get COVID. Before this variant, you were 95% less likely to get it. With this new variant, you're 80%. No vaccine is 100%. So not only do you have a 20% chance of getting COVID, in getting COVID, you almost have no chance of being hospitalized or dying. That's the point. That was the end point of the clinical trials, not protecting you from infection, but protecting you from severe disease and hospitalization. So the point of getting the vaccine is to prevent you from dying, not to prevent you from getting infected. On the other hand, you still are protected from infection by 80%, by the way.
Yeah, and that's what I'm glad you said that. Do you want to die or do you want to live? It's that simple. I really think it's that simple. I'm gonna go on to the next one before I get in trouble. The vaccine has the coronavirus in it. So why should I get it? That's not the truth.
The vaccine does not have coronavirus. Vaccine has no live viruses at all. In fact, our previous vaccines all had some type of live or attenuated, meaning weakened or killed viruses. This is a new platform. We have absolutely no virus. This is messenger RNA. And there is no way you can get the virus
from this
vaccine. The virus is not in the vaccine. So you can't get the virus from this vaccine. You could get it from previous vaccines that it appears you had no trouble taking. But this vaccine that you have hesitancy about, you can't even get it from here. So your risk was in the previous vaccines that you've already taken.
Right. And someone also said that the vaccines were produced too quickly, but you already said in 2003, that was 17 years ago, they began this because there were breakouts that were contained before they got to the United States of America. Okay, great.
Right.
I don't want to, I just get, it's just, you just said it.
Right.
You literally just said it and they still ask the question.
Yeah.
Which is great. You can ask questions. We're not trying to discourage anybody from asking questions, but dear Lord, baby Jesus, help us.
And I can add a second part to that question. Maybe they have a follow-up question with regard to the reason the vaccines were developed so quickly. If that's, what you're thinking, it does seem that way. So the second part of that question to consider is that the vaccine companies, Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, when you develop vaccines, you develop them in 3 phases. You have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 2 never begins until phase 1 ends. Not only does phase 1 end, all of the data comes in and you analyze all of the data, and then you make a decision on whether the data is positive enough to go to phase 2. The reason you do that is it costs almost $1 billion to bring a drug or vaccine to the market. So each phase, you're investing hundreds of millions of dollars. So the companies want to make certain that the data looks good before they invest in going to the next phase. Right. So this takes a long time. So what happened? We had unlimited resources. And when I say resources, I mean money. Government gave them money. So now you have de-risked the process for the companies. They can make these vaccines and combine and stack all of these phases together and essentially look at all the data at the end. Because if the data is negative and the vaccines are not going to work, it's not their $1 billion that they just lost. So if you have unlimited resources, you de-risk the process, and the entire process is escalated. In addition to that, we could do what? You can hire more scientists, hire more experts, open more study sites, close other projects, prioritize this. When you have unlimited resources, you can really accelerate the timeline, especially if those unlimited resources are not yours. It's always easy to risk someone else's money. There is no loss in it. So the only thing they would lose, there's only an upside to getting the vaccine out quickly. They have nothing to lose.
Great. So I want to get some personal anecdotes about overcoming hesitancy. And I'll start with myself. And then Ms. Johnson, if you can come in, Lisa, if you can come in, Zach. I was against the vaccine. I don't trust the government in general. Systemically, we are behind the 8 ball in so many areas because of the way that this system is set up. But my mother-in-law, I've been married 22 years this October, my mother-in-law, she, you know, and my mother come an awful lot. My mother works for the government and they had already been vaccinated. And, you know, the conversation was going, I mean, I work out a lot, I eat good, this, that, and the third. And I was in the mindset of, I'm going to beat this by living a cleaner, healthier life. And she set me down. She said, Kenny, it's not about you. And I live my life selflessly. And honestly, when she said it, it was just like the alarm that I needed to go off. And be like, you know what? It's bigger than me. And I'm going to do this for really, because, you know, I found the silver lining during the pandemic. I, like Mars, you know, the first 3 months of the pandemic, I lost $500,000 in gigs. And I looked up and had to recreate my business model. And because I was able to be thoughtful and vulnerable, honestly, which is back to my point about us all sharing these stories with you guys so that you can take them, you know, and mirror them to your own lives, because we're all similar in the fact that we lost people, we've lost money, we want to get back to normal. And, you know, and I think realizing it's bigger than you was the main ingredient for me, but I want to hear from the rest of the panel.
Yeah. I'll jump in there. You know, I got a unique chance to pivot during the pandemic because I was afforded the opportunity to work with an organization, the Black Women's Health Imperative. And you can't imagine how rewarding it is during a global pandemic to work for a Black women's health organization.
They're going to find out, honey. They're going to find all the information.
Yes.
They're going to say the world.
Yeah, it's truly, I mean, the CEO's an epidemiologist. And so when you start from that vantage point, but having a person like myself to kind of infiltrate that sector, and then to get all of this wonderful information and to figure out ways to kind of have to share it, right? And in digestible segments, because that's the issue that we've been talking about tonight. It's like, how can we present this information to our brothers and sisters so that they that it's easy to digest, as Dr. Morgan has so eloquently done tonight. You know, I found myself, I put this video in the chat, creating content for this organization so that, you know, we could break down what is the mRNA vaccines and what's in them so that people won't think that COVID is in fact inside of them. So it's been particularly rewarding. We're pivoting every day, partnerships every day. I mean, I just saw the Atlanta Falcons announce that 100% of their players are now vaccinated. And I know the Black Women's Health Imperative just partnered with the WNBA Players Association for a take a shot for the win campaign. And so it's just going to take this sort of approach with all of us. And, you know, I'm just excited to see this particular platform because this is what it takes. It takes for Kenny Burns and Mars to be on the stand. Zach.
We're going to turn that thing up, Lisa.
Yeah,
you know,
we got to crank it up a bit.
But I'm sorry, let me just pause for 1 second. Duran Bailey, can you come in and join us? I'm sorry they did not have you on my list, my brother. I would have not overlooked you the entire time.
hello.
How are you? Duran, can you come in, brother, and speak to this as well? How are you doing?
Thanks, Kennedy. Appreciate you having me. And yeah, man, I want to talk about really, I think they brought me in to talk about our youth. And, you know, that's kind of a sector that's left out of the conversation sometimes. In my particular organization, the Atlanta Music Project, we're right in Southwest Atlanta and serving these, you know, underserved community. And we have a really intense music program.
Right.
So, you know, typically, you know, our youth are in there 3 or 4 hours a day, working and learning and growing. And so we had to pivot into, you know, this virtual mode. And basically what happens is, you know, it's kind of like shout out to one of our cello teaching artists, Big Ish. He was telling me yesterday, I was like, you know, how is it to be back? How does it impact the youth?
Right.
And he was just like, you know, it's almost like, it's like an athlete. You know, imagine a young basketball player trying to learn how to play basketball and get better at his craft online. You know, you miss all of the dynamics of, you know, that one-on-one instruction, face-to-face. You have our teaching artists walking around, looking at tendencies. These are things that just don't translate online. And not only that, we realized that after a while, these kids are going to be zoomed out. You know, they don't want to be in front of a screen for 3 or 4 hours. So we had to condense our program to basically an hour-long session, you know, and so they just didn't have the growth that they would have normally had, just like probably everybody else, you know, all the students in APS and all of the surrounding places in the world. You know, our youth have really been impacted by this.
Yeah, and listen to me, brother. I have a 17-year-old that's now senior in high school. And, you know, the time away from humans, man, is a big deal when you're a child and you know nothing else but interaction with other kids. I mean, that was a lesson like no other. So I appreciate you, you know, bringing that up, because that was a real big thing. And even now, as they get back into schools, and we're now seeing the mask mandates, and he was sick on Monday. And of course, if anyone gets sick, you know, especially from the first week in school, he got COVID. Oh, he got COVID. We go take the COVID test. He doesn't have COVID, right? But then in his mind, because prior to him getting sick, he thought he had COVID too. But prior to him getting sick, he was like, I'm not taking that. I'm not with, and he's an athlete. He just received a D1 offer from Radford University, which he's going to attend next fall. So, but he now is like, I'm getting vaccinated. 2 days, it was 2 days of sick, not knowing if he had COVID and not scared to death. But to your point, man, they have a new way of learning, a new way of understanding, and the pivot for them is much harder, I think.
I mean, you think about half of the reason they come to our program is for the music.
Right.
Most of it is social, you know, being right there. It's like the family. These kids are together every day, you know, working on projects together that they create. So yeah, they're missing out on it.
Well,
yeah, I was going to say my story when I had to also pivot. I don't know if you guys know, I'm actually a cardiologist. And I was leading the research program across Piedmont and developing their innovation and technology. And when COVID hit, it was sort of, you know, all these things are being shut down, and, you know, you're sort of voluntold, I like to say, you're going to lead the COVID task force, whatever that's going to mean. And so in doing so and trying to find my footing, I was able to kind of leverage all the years I had been teaching fellows, students, residents who had come under me, giving grand rounds. And I developed this concept as I began to really understand that African Americans were really being impacted. And I saw that early because those numbers were coming through our hospital. This was even before it was nationally known. I started to say, hey, we've got a larger group of Blacks with COVID at this hospital at Piedmont than whites. That was very early on. So I developed this social media platform called Stairwell Chronicles, where I take a single question about COVID and then the vaccine, and I answer it in 60 seconds or less in a very conversational way. I actually sit on the stairs. That's why I call it Stairwell Chronicles. I'm not in a white coat. I'm just your sister, your whatever, neighbor. And I answer the question, no matter how complicated it is, I break it down, and in 60 seconds, I tell you what you need to know about it. I don't push the vaccine, but I try to provide education so you can begin to put leaves on the branches and then hopefully start to put branches on the tree, and then eventually, flesh out your tree. And then you can make an informed decision. And that's really the point of it, making an informed decision. So in creating, I've probably done about 60 of these now. And you can follow me on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, and just find the question that's for you and hear me talk about it in 60 seconds. If you don't like anything that I've said, I've only wasted a minute, really, of your time, right? You can't be mad about it. So I think all of us have had to pivot and sort of figure out what is our new footing in this kind of brave new world. And what does that look like? And how can we continue to contribute, at a high level to society, leveraging our talents and our individual skills, which are all different and all special.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to get you on Baller Alert and the Shade Room and all the other popular sites so you can get this information in 60 seconds.
Yes.
I want to talk to Ms. Johnson for 2 seconds. Can you tell us more about what the Urban League and what we're doing in the community in Fulton County?
So first of all, Fulton County has been one of our partners around emergency financial assistance. And so we've been able to support Fulton County residents to pay back rent, the first wave mortgage payments, utilities, and sadly extended stays in cases. The shortage of affordable housing is just abysmal. There's no place for families to go. So the strategy has to be keep people in their homes, get them a mechanism to earn household income again, pay up their arrears, and let them go forward. The one story, though, I do want to leave that I was so poignant to me was a young man did not want to get vaccinated. He lived with his parents and his grandparents, and he was out socially a lot, wasn't wearing his mask, and brought the virus into his home. And both his grandparents got it and died. Who wants to live with that? I just can't even imagine what he must be going through now. So to your point, Kenny, this isn't about just us. It's about our family members, our children. Now it's affecting children down in Macon. They have actually opened a pediatric ward or unit for kids with COVID. That was one of the saving graces early on. Kids didn't get it, right? It was so rare, but that's changing. So for all of us, it's about thinking about others, looking at the numbers. The numbers, there are always going to be exceptions. I mean, there is a risk involved in almost everything we do, right? But at the end of the day, those exception cases get elevated in the news. But if you look at the broader numbers, if it's you, it's bad, right? Or your family member or friend, we get that. There's no guarantee. But at the end of the day, the proportionate impact there is the majority of the time, it has resulted in lower deaths for those with vaccinations, less severe illness. That is documented. And I know I'm really in Dr. Morgan's lane. But I think those are the things we have to reinforce with our community. The majority of the new cases are unvaccinated people.
Right.
And, and they're dying. Some of them, not all of them, but they can get very sick and so forth. So that's my 2 cents, and it is what it is, but we've got to do better. And I'm grateful for this platform.
Absolutely, Ms. Johnson. We appreciate you. As we come to a close, I want to share a little more information on how lifestyle influencers and organizations can create COVID-free communities. There are several important ways that this can happen. And I'm sure someone's going to put something on the screen right now. Prevent super spreader events, require proof of vaccination and or offer rapid testing, require masking indoors, create access points for vaccination partner with Fulton County to host vaccination events. I want to tell everyone who's listening to this too, Live Nation just announced that you cannot come to a Live Nation concert if you're not vaccinated or have a COVID-19 test within 48 or 72 hours of the event. So these are all things you can do to close the vaccine equity gap. I think these are some of the most responsible things we can do. It is also critical that we recognize our influence and spread the word. Before we go,
So Kenny, I like to say something to whoever might be listening, man. You know, I feel like right now we have a lot of people that are risk takers. You know, I'm one. You know, I've taken risk all my life and my professional choices, and you know, it really boils down to this not being a risk that, you know, I'm willing to take. You know, you're risking your life. This is life or death. And, you know, a lot of times when we get afraid, we freeze up. You know, you're afraid, let's say if it's dogs coming, you're not gonna just run. You don't know which way you're running. You know, it's like this is one of those things, like, don't allow this fear to paralyze you into inaction. You know, don't be scared to death, because that's what this is. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's that serious, you know. And you know, you really got to be a team player here. You know, like that's what worked for me. You know, looking myself in the mirror as the risk taker. I've done a lot of things that, and God has blessed me and covered me through everything. But God don't bless stupidity. You know, it just, you know, and the only way that applies to you is that if you refuse to listen to the information that's being given here, that's being provided, that's out here for you, you're making a life or death choice on emotions, facts over feelings, you know, and be a team. You know, this herd immunity thing is real. Research it. You know, don't take Dr. James' word for it. Research it.
Take my word for it. Absolutely.
I want to say
take a word.
I want to say this. It's so important what Zach did, because he was a very vocal anti-vaxxer on social media that pivoted. And once he made that informed choice, he didn't do it in silence. He put it on his social media. I've shared it many times. I know other people probably have. And I think that's very important too, is for us not to be silent once we understand and are informed. And I just want to close me personally by just saying thank you to Gail Brooks and Alive and In Color, because this is just what the doctor ordered.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna say something to what you said. God don't make no mistakes. And I'm just telling y'all, don't let that go over your head. And if you want to act like you can't get it and you can't die, well, go on, shoot craps then. Go on, shoot craps. You want to play craps with your life? Go on, roll the dice.
Right. And as Zach said, you know, I was joking, but verify the information, but verify it from reputable, informed sources, medically peer-reviewed sources of information. Not your auntie who dabbles in astronomy, not your hairdresser, not anybody, you know, your neighbor who's an electrician and retired and whatever. You find information from people who are knowledgeable and reputable, such that you can really make an informed decision, and you're not making decisions based on misinformation.
Yeah. Anybody else have any closing remarks before I give mine?
The last
Get
thing that I
vaccinated.
would say is that, yeah, get vaccinated, but you probably know a lot of people who say, hey, look at me, I've never been vaccinated, look how healthy I am, I don't take any vaccines. And I want you all to understand that concept of herd immunity, because people who are saying that don't understand that concept. It's not that they've achieved some higher level of nirvana or some ethereal physical being, or they're taking exactly the right cocktail of vitamins that they've discovered. No, they are able to stay healthy because I got my vaccine. And as long as they remain a small segment of the population, they are protected by herd immunity. So these bragging rights are nonsense. Their health literally depends on me. And so they should be concerned about whether their neighbor is healthy, because since they haven't gotten the vaccine, their health is predicated on me staying healthy. They become dependent on other people, especially these people who say they want to be independent by not getting the vaccine. You now are dependent on me and others who've gotten the vaccine.
Deep.
Could I just close with this? I really also want us to encourage people to use the mask. You know, let's not get caught up in ego or whatever it is that is stopping you. Actually, wearing the mask actually protects others more. And I may be wrong about that, but that was what my doctor told me, that if both people are masked, my opportunity of getting it goes way down. If I have it on and the other person doesn't, I still have a greater chance of getting it than they do, because they get the protection, whatever it is that's coming out of my body out to them. So let's let go of that. Just wear the mask so we can all get back to normal. It's simple. It's not an ego thing. It's not a don't tell me what to do thing. It's about caring for others so we all get across this finish line so we can keep our economy strong. Because without that, everything falls apart, y'all. And our families are already at risk. Another surge of an economic downturn going to put a whole bunch of our families, like a state of Georgia employee told me. We said, how bad could it get? He said, depression level.
That's right.
Now let that sink in, what depression level looks like in all your history books. We don't want to go there, right?
And don't forget the implications of our voting block as well. Our people are trying to suppress our vote. We're allowing ourselves to die.
You know, that's critical.
That's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother webinar.
A whole nother thing.
Before we wrap, Dr. Jane, could you repeat that one statistic about the Delta variant and how it shows up, the viral load of it shows up 1,000 times more than the original COVID?
Right. So this particular variant has a viral load 1,200 times greater than the previous variants. That's why our vaccines in the previous variant, we were able, if you were vaccinated, to take off your mask indoors, because the previous variants really couldn't penetrate that vaccinated status, with the exception of very narrow percentage. And if it did penetrate and you had a breakthrough infection, your viral load was so low that not only would you not be sick, your chances of passing it on to others were almost negligible, zero, because the viral load was just so low because your vaccines protected you. In this case, the Delta variant is so virulent that even those of us who are vaccinated will have a viral load 1,200 times higher than the previous variant. And not only will that mean that we develop infection, even though we may not get sick, we are absolutely contagious now to others. The viral load is the number of particles you have. The higher the viral load, the more the viral particles, the higher your chances are of becoming very sick. And so we want to understand that this variant, which is actually another version, this is not the same virus. In fact, you should think about this as COVID-21, the new and improved COVID, the updated version that we have to download, that's stealthier, stronger, deadlier, more contagious. This is COVID-21. This is not COVID-19.
Got it. Well, on behalf of the Fulton County board that's in here, we appreciate you. Live and in color, I'd like to thank Duran Bailey, although I didn't get to talk to my brother a lot. Duran, we're going to do this again, brother. We're going to get, you know what I'm saying, get you in here. It wasn't in, I'm sorry. Lisa Cunningham, thank you, love. Nancy A. Flake Johnson, Dr. Morgan, I appreciate you. DJ Mars, Zach, I'll see you in these streets soon with the mask on, I'm sure. I am your lifestyle specialist, Kenny Burns, from the People Station V103. We love you in real life. We wouldn't be bringing you this information if we didn't. Please get vaccinated, mask up, and be responsible.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
Y'all have a blessed one.
Bye.